Dr. Glenn Deason is a professor of international relations at the University of Southeastern Norway and an editor at the Russia in Global Affairs journal. He's now joining us live from Oslo. It's good to see you, Mr. Deason, and welcome to the program. Fighting a war is one thing, and dealing with corruption is another. How do you think President Volodymyr Zelensky or whoever will take charge of Ukraine after the war will maneuver through corruption scandals or graft in their government?
Well, I think this is going to be a key problem because corruption is something that prevents essentially anything from being done. And that's been a key side effect of this war as well, that Ukraine has always had a big problem with corruption. But of course, with all these weapons being sent into Ukraine and often a lack of control, it only fueled corruption further. So now you have a much larger supply of money that feeds into the corruption. And as you mentioned on the segment before, this doesn't only fuel corruption within the country, but it also has big implications for the battlefield, as the Ukrainian army is already suffering from weapon shortages. And furthermore, their reputation is also in decline because of this corruption and because the weapons are fueling black markets, which could threaten international security. So there's and this is very problematic because, of course, this may limit the willingness of the West to send even more weapons.
Actually, on that last point that you made there, if the Western world sees these reports that Ukraine is having it difficult to deal with corruption allegations in their government, do you think they will be able to provide Ukraine with these arms that they ask for?
Well, it's different priorities, but obviously there is a growing pushback in Europe, but also definitely in the United States against continuing this proxy war. And usually we see that the weapons being siphoned off and sold on the black market, that this is often used as a reason why they shouldn't send more weapons. And as I mentioned, it's also been a problem of reputation for Ukraine because, again, it's burdened by corruption. And in the beginning of this war, our media transformed Ukraine and Zelensky into this, shiny democracy and this new Churchill. Now we're seeing this more and more focus on this deep corruption. So I think this is becoming very problematic. And again, the main change, obviously, now is a new administration in the United States, and these sentiments, the concerns about the weapons not reaching the front line and instead fueling international arms trade. This is something that Trump and many in this administration has mentioned in the past. So as there's a possibility that Trump might start to cut off Ukraine from more arms supplies, it could be also an effort to try to show to the Americans that they are taking this seriously and trying to clean it up. Again, this would be a speculation, though.
Mr. Deason, I want your very quick reaction to this statement that was made by the NATO Secretary General, Mark Rutte, who says that if Russia wins the war, then it could jeopardize the credibility of NATO.
Well, I think that is correct. NATO was supposed to be an organization which deterred, which were bringing stability and peace. But after the Cold War, NATO was no longer a status quo power. It became a revisionist power by expanding and pursuing what it calls out-of-area missions, which is invading other countries effectively. So for this reason, as it expanded towards Ukraine, it triggered a war and provoked a Russian invasion. Again, this is something you hear more now from, especially from Slovakia, Hungary, and I think that NATO could suffer a real crisis. And not only would a loss in Ukraine lead to a legitimacy crisis, but this will probably also fuel American interest in shifting focus towards Asia. So I do think there's a real risk that NATO could actually, if not collapse, at least become much weaker as a result of this war. But again, I think Rutte was referring to something else, that NATO has to show that it has the final say, otherwise it becomes discredited. Of course, this is also a way to look at it.
All right. Dr. Glenn Deason, as always, it's always good to talk to you. Thank you for your insights today.
It's good to see you again. Thank you.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.